So I want to say before I start, I grew up in a pub. I know what it's like for your family's income to be week to week dependent on your business. I know what it's like to want to get back into the social settings that we've all had. But what I think is the message that is coming through from the business owners is this is inconsistent. There's no end in sight. And actually...
Well, there is an end in sight. It's June the 21st.
I think what James is saying is, though, even if it went on longer, a proper financial package of support that made sense and allowed these people to sustain their business, sustain their employees, is actually fundamentally important. You know, if you got ready to open up and had to throw away perishable goods, that has been happening throughout the entire pandemic. So what I want to see, you know, and it is inconsistent. So, you know, schools are going back. I don't know what James' home life setup is. You could share a household with a teacher who is going back into non-ventilated settings, but your business can't open. So clarity, funding, support for workers, support for businesses, I think that would make all of this much easier to sustain. And we haven't had those things, and we still don't really have a sight of what that would look like. But I have two reservations, and one is about workers and the extent to whether or not workers will be compelled, coerced, and persuaded in other ways to have a vaccine when they may not want to, and what that actually means for you and your employment rights. But my primary concern, and I worry that this has happened a lot during the pandemic, is we're always looking for a quick solution, for a shortcut, for the next technical fix, when what we actually really need to do is get on top of the virus, get as close to a zero COVID state as possible, and then we wouldn't be looking for the next technological fix. So I have lots and lots of empathy with business owners who would like this as a way to enable their customers to feel safe. But I think there's a huge sting in the tail for workers here who have often been sidelined in many conversations about reopening, particularly in terms of hospitality and getting people back in. I don't understand why we're making up excuses for Matt Hancock's either gross act of amnesia or willful misremembering of what happened last year. I mean, I was on numerous calls via the TUC with government. There was insufficient PPE in hospitals. There was frequently the adoption of a two-tier system of who got PPE because there was so little of it. There were surgeons, nurses, care workers reusing PPE. There were some examples of hospitals being delivered PPE that was 10 years out of date. That's before we even get towards the care sector. You know, some of the lowest paid, insecurely paid people, literally the ones holding iPads while we had to watch our loved ones in care homes on Zoom, not having access to PPE. The idea we're all took by surprise couldn't possibly accommodate this when that is decades, years and decades of underfunding of our NHS is an insult to anybody who provides any care, who works in that sector or associated industries. And it would be so much nicer if we could just apologise to those people, acknowledge what happened, and not give contracts to our mates who don't even have any experience in providing PPE. That would be a great start. I mean, I'm going to just endorse the final point that actually listening to the professionals that deliver education and what is best is crucial to anything that happens going forward. I think with regards to the exact question, I think catch-up is a bit of a distraction, particularly for schools, particularly colleges and universities. Learning never stops, work never stops. We don't close in the summer. There's all sorts of prep. So the idea that people stop working and therefore can invest time in catch-up is in of itself problematic. I think to address the particular question, if there's going to be funding made available, and this will cost money, disadvantaged children taking part in play, in sports, funding for meal clubs, you know, all of the things that families, teachers, children have been specifically asking for, I think is what will be crucial in the summer, not some idea of catch-up to pass SATs or to pass exams, and actually channeling money where it is needed and engaging teachers and those professionals in those conversations and not dictating to them yet more demands on their time. And I think just to use the university and college setting, you know, the expansion of blended learning, which is online and in person, has already meant that people are at burnout. The idea that people have a second shift or a third or fourth shift to give throughout the summer when they are exhausted is just not going to happen. And if the government does want catch-up teaching prioritised in any sector, they need to be really clear about what schools, colleges and universities have to deprioritise, because work doesn't stop, places don't close, so they're just asking people to do more if they don't deprioritise and additionally fund.